During the renovation of a church in Paris, two workers find an area not listed on the building's plans. Despite the macabre environment, their curiosity leads them to explore the space, taking everything that seems valuable. Crawling through the cobwebs, they reach a crypt that contains a kind of dungeon. A heavy grate blocks the passage, as if it were keeping something trapped on the other side. Without thinking much about what it could be, they remove the grate, and one of them crawls inside. A fierce roar comes from deep within, and the man sees something that fills him with terror. The other tries to pull him back, but what emerges from the hole is only half of his colleague. The survivor tries to escape, and we see a creature with enormous wings chasing after him. Upon reaching the church wall, the man is pulled back, screaming in fear. Days later, historian Jack Randall is talking about gargoyles and other representations of magical beings. The class isn't very entertaining, and Jack himself is more interested in his friend Carol. He dismisses the class early to enjoy the woman's company. Unfortunately, she has bad news about his book, as yet another publisher has rejected the work. She suggests adjustments for future attempts, but Jack is very discouraged. Besides his declining career, he has just gone through a divorce. Trying to cheer her friend up, Carol tells him about a very peculiar church they could visit. She even separated some photos to spark his interest and says there are a series of mysterious rumors about that place. Without much enthusiasm, Jack agrees that the decor looks strangely preserved. Determined to cheer him up, Carol convinces him to take a look at the church. It is already night when they park at the gate, and Jack gets out of the car showing total disinterest. The building appears recent, but Carol explains that several churches were built at the same spot, and remnants of the older ones still exist. Jack is a bit shocked to see her breaking into the property. She explains that the church will soon be demolished, and no one cares anymore. Jack accompanies her without noticing that someone is watching them from the street. When they enter the church, Carol shows the way to the crypt, and Jack can't maintain an indifferent air in front of so many incredible works. Carol is pleased to see him smiling, but her own interest isn't great enough to descend the dark staircase. He goes down alone and finds more impressive items, including a gargoyle that almost gives him a heart attack. Carol is getting cold, and her flashlight begins to fail. It's then that she notices a fallen helmet on the floor. Everything the workers had collected is scattered around, and she gets interested in some objects, especially one that looks like an elongated stone. Jack is filming the decor when he hears a noise coming from behind a wooden door and gets closer to investigate. Not wanting to mess with the door, he lowers the camera to peek underneath. The image shows a monstrous being moving rapidly. Jack bolts upstairs, shouting his friend's name, leaving her confused about what happened. When they reach the gate, Carol starts to laugh, and Jack feels embarrassed. He no longer has much certainty about what he really saw and cannot check the video because the camera is jammed. A horrifying sound comes from inside the church, as if a winged monster is flapping its wings. Stopping their laughter, they decide to leave. After the adventure, they go to a cafe, and Jack is very excited. As they talk about gargoyles, a sudden crash echoes in the street, and some people begin to scream. Jack can hardly believe it when he sees his car completely wrecked. Something has collapsed right on top of it, and the metal is marked with what looks like claw marks. Everyone is already scared when the car is hit again, and to their horror, this time what falls is a person. Inspector Gilbert arrives at the scene some time later. He questions witnesses and clears the press, including a journalist named Nicole Ricard. She still tries to interview Jack, but Carol doesn't let her. Later, Jack calls Carol asking for a ride to work the next day. After speaking with him, she puts away the things she brought from the church into the back of a closet. Suddenly, the lights go out. She starts lighting some candles when she hears a noise at the door and decides to check, but there is no one in the hallway. Then she hears another noise, this time from inside her apartment. A sudden gust extinguishes several candles at once, and we see an animal-like shadow moving behind her. A creature emerges from the darkness with a terrifying roar. Carol tries to lock herself in the bedroom, but a claw pierces through the door. The window is her only escape, and the monster is already grasping her foot as she flees. Running across the rooftop, she sees a huge creature in the sky, resembling a gargoyle that has come to life. The monster comes straight for her, and the encounter ends very badly for Carol. The next day, she does not show up to pick up Jack and does not answer the phone. Worried, he goes to her house and sees that something terrible has happened there. It is Inspector Gilbert who delivers the bad news, and Jack is devastated. On top of that, he now has to answer to an interrogation. Gilbert wants to know where he was last night after his car was destroyed. He explains that he took a taxi, leaving Carol first. It was around midnight when they last saw each other. After that, he went home alone, so there is no one to confirm his version of the events. Jack is furious to realize that he is being treated as a suspect. Gilbert argues that every time he talks to Jack, it's because someone has died under bizarre circumstances. The young man defends himself, saying that Gilbert also saw what remained of Carol, and it is impossible for a man to have done that. It must have been some kind of wild animal. The inspector replies that he would be surprised if he knew what people are capable of. Moreover, what happened to Carol was not an isolated case. Jack didn't know this, but several similar crimes had occurred in Paris in the past few nights. Gilbert tells him he is free to go, at least for now. The next night, a woman is walking her dog when the animal starts acting strangely and then turns into a dark corner. The woman runs after him and begins to scream, petrified. Her dog is being attacked by something much larger than him. The woman tries to run, but the monster attacks her as well. Jack takes a few days off to recover from the loss. Trying to tidy up his room, he finds the camera and begins to see what he photographed that day. One of the photos of the church that Carol gave him is on the table. For the first time, he notes that there is something different between the two images. Intrigued, he returns to the church and sees that the demolition is already in full swing. He is not the only one upset about the work. A priest is being forcibly dragged out, and we see that he was the one observing Jack and Carol that night. His name is Gable, and he is outraged by the demolition, cursing the fools who decided to do it. Jack asks what the problem is, and he explains that that church has invaluable historical value. When Jack says he is a historian, Gable becomes irritated with him, asking where he was during the campaign to save the church. Ignoring the priest's aggression, Jack asks about a specific gargoyle, showing the two photos. The printed image, which is not that old, shows the gargoyle right in front of the church, just as intact as the rest. However, in the photo he took just days ago, there is nothing there. Still very angry, the priest says it doesn't make any difference since the gargoyle was going to turn to dust just like everything else. Meanwhile, Inspector Gilbert is in the alley where the woman and her dog were attacked. His assistant comes to inform him that they found the head and also hands him the victim's documents. At home, Jack is focused on unraveling the mystery of the missing gargoyle when Nicole Ricard appears on TV. The report is about UFOs spotted at the beach. Jack puts down the papers and looks for the station's phone number. Unfortunately, the call comes at a bad time. Nicole is tired of her ridiculous job and her irresponsible colleagues. Jack also doesn't have much tact and immediately asks if she is the reporter who talks to crazy people. She then remembers that Jack is the owner of the car who didn't want to give an interview, and he hurries to say that he has changed his mind. The two arrange to meet at the station, and he says he has information about what happened to Carol Beckham. However, as soon as he leaves the house, Gilbert is already waiting for him. Meanwhile, the demolition continues, and the workers have no idea they are in the priest's sights. Gable is in a trailer in front of the church, and we see a body near him. Gilbert takes Jack to the same restaurant he went to with Carol and begins to ask about his books. Only now do we find out why all the publishers reject him. His early academic studies included speculations about the existence of dragons and gargoyles in the real world. No matter how much he insists it was just a hypothesis, all his work was discredited, and even his name is now associated with ridiculous theories. This professional ruin caused his divorce and his move to Europe. Carol was one of the people who encouraged him to publish the risky material, and now Gilbert suspects that he has harbored resentment. Jack tells the inspector he needs to stop ignoring the evidence and start looking for a flying animal. After getting rid of the inspector, he goes to the station and shows the photos to Nicole and her assistant Walsh. When Jack tells them about his visit to the church, the two begin to think he is just another crazy person. But he leaves the camera with them, assuring them there is a video with proof, and Nicole feeds the hope of an exclusive story. Using her talent to evade the authorities, she enters Carol's apartment to take pictures and finds the objects in the closet. A reddish light is pulsating from inside the elongated stone, and Nicole realizes it emits a low sound. Taking the stone in her bag, she returns to the station. Walsh says she has to watch Jack's video. He really managed to film some kind of ferocious animal in the church's basement. Since the image is very poor, they can't see exactly what it is, but Walsh assures them the video is real. He sends a message to Jack, who is currently lying in wait at the church. He sees the priest entering with a shotgun and decides to stay there for a few more minutes, spying on Gable. Nicole decides to fetch him while her colleague tries to clean up the video's image. Jack replies shortly after and says he is heading to the station, but Walsh forgets to inform his friend. She walks alone to the car, caught in a sudden gust of wind. Then she hears a loud thump, which couldn't have been just the wind, and begins to walk faster. When the noise comes from above, she looks up and notices something moving across the rooftops with incredible speed. When Jack arrives at the station, Walsh finally remembers to inform Nicole. When she answers, her colleague finds her breathless voice strange, and she says she must be imagining things. As soon as she reaches the car, the gargoyle dives through the air right at her, but she ducks just in time. Walsh hears the screams and becomes concerned. He hands a gun to Jack, and the two head downstairs to help her. Nicole manages to get into the car, but the monster lands on the hood and shatters the windshield. Its claws try to reach the victim, but she escapes through the back door. Face to face with the winged monster, Nicole screams and hides under the car. Then she remembers the pulsating stone that is still in her bag. She throws the object away, hoping it will calm the predator. The guys arrive just in time to see the gargoyle in full attack mode, and Jack fires several times. The bullets ricochet off the monster without affecting it, but at least it leaves. Nicole then tells the two about the stone she found in Carol's house, and the three conclude that it is an egg. Jack tries to tell the truth to Gilbert, but the inspector continues to mock him, and Nicole's questionable reputation doesn't help convince him either. The only evidence they have is the video, but Walsh has bad news about that. Speaking with a colleague, he discovers that the station's computer network had to be formatted, and all the files were lost. Nicole asks why he didn't back it up, and he explains that saving her life seemed more important at that moment. Frustrated, the reporter is about to give up on the case, but Jack thinks there is still a chance. That low sound Nicole mentioned must be some sort of sonar, and that's how the mother tracks the eggs. They just need to find one more to lure her back and record another video, saving all three of their careers. While the trio plans the risky kidnapping, Gilbert receives an egg directly in his office. It came in the middle of the evidence from Carol's case. Without thinking, he puts the object in his pocket and leaves for another investigation. Jack and his new friends invade the church as soon as night falls. Gable greets them with a shotgun, but Jack was already expecting this. He reveals everything that has happened, and the priest admits he already knew about the monster on the loose. Nicole finds that body from the trailer and suspects Gable for a moment. The priest explains that this was the work of the gargoyle, and he only brought the body to the site as bait. Telling his story, Gable says he was sent to this parish when he was young, and the previous priest told him the secrets of the basement. In that dungeon, the beast was imprisoned for over 1,000 years, and legend says it would only be freed for a final battle. Tasked with protecting the world from the beast, Gable now martyrizes himself, lamenting his failure. Jack interrupts all this drama, saying they need to take action now. Meanwhile, Gilbert investigates another crime with the same bizarre characteristics, including signs that the victim was lifted into the air. He climbs to the top of a building searching for clues and ends up finding the rest of his own victim. Then he feels something vibrating, and as he takes the egg out of his pocket, the gargoyle also lifts him into the air. On the sidewalk, a stunned police officer witnesses the tragic end of the inspector. By this time, the station van has become the headquarters of the gargoyle hunters, and everyone is showing what they brought to contribute. Walsh has arranged a special ultraviolet flashlight with a strobe effect. The idea is to paralyze the gargoyle with this, as it always turns to stone under sunlight. Gable shows his special ammunition to defeat the monster when it's petrified. Finally, Walsh presents GPS darts, which they plan to use to follow the beast to the nest and destroy the remaining eggs. Nicole thinks everything is great, but they still need the extra egg. The priest warns them that he brought one from the crypt. They then go to a park, and Nicole is the only one courageous enough to walk around with the egg in the open. She places it on the grass, and moments later, the mother appears. With no time to return to the van, Nicole tries to protect herself under the park bench. Gable prevents the guys from helping her, fearing it will ruin the trap. Jack starts shooting alongside Gable, and one of the shots hits the egg. The gargoyle picks it up from the ground and flies away, while Nicole returns furious. Jack is also mad at the priest and warns him that he won't let him risk anyone else's life. Gable retorts that individual lives don't matter when humanity is at stake. Then the tracker leads them back to the church. Nicole can't believe the nest was right there. Jack asks her to stay in the car with the engine running in case they need to flee quickly. Once again, they enter the dark church, and Jack doesn't understand why the gargoyle isn't there, as the GPS indicates. Walsh says she might have stepped out for a snack, and Jack doesn't like the joke much. When the roars start, Jack realizes the monster is beneath them, inside the crypt. Walsh notices that the priest isn't with them, but Jack doesn't want to wait and starts to go down. From inside the van, Nicole sees Gable with a very suspicious device and realizes he intends to blow up the church with his friend inside. She tries to warn them, but can't complete the call. With no other choice, she decides to enter the church as well. Gable has reached the others, and they advance through the crypt until they come to a fork. Jack takes one of the paths and asks the other two to wait there, but Gable disobeys him and goes down the other path. Afraid of being left alone, Walsh follows the priest. Nicole is lost in the tunnels until she bumps into Jack. She tells him what Gable is planning, and then they hear the creatures roar. Jack tells her to turn off the flashlight. The sound of the huge paws reverberates through the tunnels, and the monster's shadow is cast on a wall. Its claws come very close to the two, but they don't detect their presence. The gargoyle then goes to the other duo, and Walsh realizes that it is right behind him. Gable pushes him and starts pursuing the creature. Jack and Nicole arrive just as Walsh is trying to use the special flashlight. They warn that the plan has changed, and they need to get out of there before everything explodes. The three crawl through a narrow tunnel until Jack falls and ends up right in the gargoyle's nest. The other two also descend, shocked by the number of eggs. When Jack tries to use the ultraviolet flashlight, the eggs immediately turn to normal stones, and the trio begins to smash all of them. The mother gargoyle, who is approaching, is not happy about this. They hear the roar and start to block the passage. The gargoyle destroys everything in seconds, but the three manage to escape through the narrowest tunnel. Walsh and Nicole want to escape while they can, but Jack says the mission won't be accomplished as long as the monster is alive. Exiting the tunnel, they come to a wide part of the church where Gable is facing the gargoyle. Walsh starts filming the duel, but no one can see the opponent, and the priest seems to be firing randomly. Finally, the creature flies into the light, and everyone screams while Jack turns on the ultraviolet flashlight. He sees the device in the priest's hand and begs him to reconsider the plan, but Gable is practically in a trance. He gives a speech about his destiny as the last guardian of the beast until the gargoyle grabs him. Jack tells the other two to leave when she drops him, knowing she will return to finish off the priest. When that happens, Jack uses the flashlight, but its battery dies halfway through. As they look for another, the monster begins to break free from the stone. When the gargoyle is freed and attacks, Nicole activates the special light, paralyzing the creature before it can kill Jack. Then Gable takes the last egg from his pocket and asks everyone to get out because the gargoyle is already recovering. They run outside, and as soon as they exit, the priest triggers the detonation and blows up the entire church, sacrificing himself to save everyone. Surviving is a huge relief, but the equipment was destroyed, and Nicole laments the loss of the report. Then Walsh shows that he managed to keep the tape, which will prove the tales and save all three of their careers.